Alright, welcome to the Storyteller Sessions, presented by myself, we are here with my best friends, long time, sweet William Robert Stoy IV. For the time being, until he changes his band name again. Anyway,
hey, I'm good.
So you did 2 songs with us. You did Cousin Peter. Well, actually, can you tell us what you talk here going on camera?
Sure. Yeah. So we did 2 songs today. The first one was Cousin Peter, and the second one was Blood Brother. And there are 2 songs off an EP that I wrote a long time ago.
And this is actually an intervention. We're here to get him to record all 4 songs.
Yeah, Richie's been trying to get me to record this for years, literally many years, and yeah, it's long overdue. So hopefully this will spur that recording process. But anyway, yeah, the first song that I did was Cousin Peter, and it was one of the first songs I ever wrote, actually. Maybe the first legitimate song I ever wrote on my own, outside of the band. And it came about because I kind of was experimenting with some guitar riffs, just as I was kind of writing some of my own stuff outside of the band. But when I turned 21, the train came. Yeah, so around the time that I turned 21, actually the week before I turned 21, my cousin Peter passed away. And so his funeral ended up being on the night of my 21st birthday, which was just a weird happenstance. And so my mother, my brother, and I went to the funeral. And I, at that time, was bringing my guitar with me everywhere I went and trying to write some songs. And so I had my guitar with me that night, and it was a long drive to the funeral and back. And I remember I was kind of playing around with the riff a little bit in the car just as we were driving. And then we got to the funeral, and we were there for that, and I'm seeing my family, and this was an especially sorrowful funeral because it was my cousin who was just barely older than me, and he was just went through a season of his life where he was struggling with drug addiction and was trying to get sober, and he actually overdosed. So my family was mourning bitterly through this process. And I remember towards the end of the funeral service, I walked up to Cousin Peter's mother, and I just hugged her, and we were crying, and she looked at me and just had a moment of revelation, and she was like, "Oh my God, isn't it your birthday this week?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's today actually." And we just had this weird moment where she was like, "Oh, I'm sorry this is happening today." And I was like, "God, don't apologize about that. I'm sorry this is happening." So it's just a strange circumstance. And, in our society, everyone really hypes up your 21st birthday, and there's kind of a whole expectation for how to celebrate it. And usually it's wrought with belligerent drunkenness. And for some reason that's meaningful to us when really it's kind of meaningless, and most of us don't even remember many of the details of that night. But I remember almost all of the details of that night because I was stone cold sober in more ways than one. And so after the funeral, we were driving home, and lyrics just came to me, and I was like, "Oh, this is the song that's meant to go with that guitar riff that I've been just dabbling with." And so I started writing the lyrics, and I remember wanting to write songs that were very honest and, just very real and raw. There's a lot of fluffy music out there, and even I have gone through phases of writing kind of lyrics for the point of them just being poetic in their own right, which there's nothing wrong with that, but I kind of got through that season to just a new phase of like, man, I want to write something that really is honest and means something, and so I started writing that song. And
especially like we years before like a song or like having a child aborted, like obviously we never went through that, but it was a fabricated concept for something that we felt strongly about.
Yeah.
So in ways it wasn't honest because it's not something we really had any knowledge of.
Right.
Intimately. So
right.
There's a sense of being able to like write out of a fabrication.
Yeah.
For a good purpose and writing what is honest and true.
Right. And to the point of storytelling, that's kind of what I wanted to do, really, and that's kind of what was birthed that night, and what the whole EP is. It is a story, and I realized, like, my family has a story to tell, and there's a lot of significance to it. And like we were talking about before, I think all of us go through life experiences, loss and grief and pain in different ways, and so, you know, most people can relate to that. And anyway, I just wanted to tell my family's story and also kind of honor my cousin and my family in general, and we've lost a lot of family members. So I started writing that song that night, and as the opening line says, Cousin Peter passed away today. So
yeah, Billy and I recently kind of were talking about how something like the last, like the only times you have seen your family even since then have been when somebody died.
Yeah. So that
concept that happens with a lot of us. There's a lot of people when we see people die.
Right. Yeah, that's where the lyrics kind of go. And so the song talks about how we take people for granted, relationships for granted, and the different scenarios that I talk about in the song. Again, they're all honest. They're all actually part of my story. They're things that I've experienced. And again, there's nothing wrong with writing a poetic picture for someone, telling a story about something, even if it's not your story, but this just happens to be my actual life experience, and kind of coming to that revelation of, oh man, I take people for granted. And then I'm having this weird realization where, like, okay, my family has lost members over the past couple of years, and I'm like, I don't see them until we lose someone, and then we all get together, and it's like, why do we only get together around mourning these deaths, you know?
That's something I've always loved about this song and a lot of your songs in general, and it's kind of one of the reasons I started doing this storyteller session concept, which is, one thing I love about your songs is I know the stories behind, like, some of the particular mentions in the song, I can picture them because I know who the people are, and I know, like, what exactly you're referencing as vague as they can kind of be to not really call attention to the specific people. And so it's that thing of, like, listening to a song and relating to it very personally, because you're not there, but you know the people involved, right? And that's why I was like, oh well, what if I can get people to tell the story, and then all the music can be like that, where we can learn the details behind it. So in a way, yes, kind of inspired this whole video series. So
Word.
But then the other one was Blood Brother. Yeah. Which I wish he was here for this, because this river is a very special spot for all of us.
Yeah. Well, he'll be on the EP whenever we get around to that, and we'll see him in future performances of that song and several others, I'm sure. But yeah, Blood Brother. So that's a song that I wrote for my blood brother, my one and only, Brent Stoy. Love you, man. He is my brother biologically, but so much more, as the song, states. We've obviously gone through a lifetime of things together. I think one thing we've done well as we've grown up is come to that realization together of, like, man, we take people for granted and relationships for granted. And so Brent and I have tried really hard to be intentional about not taking each other for granted, especially going through a lot of what we've gone through in life, and again, losing a lot of people, including our biological father, who passed away when we were fairly young. And so that song starts to speak to that concept and just about my family dynamic in general. What it's like to lose a father, what it's like for a mother and two brothers to, make their way in the world, trying to figure out what it's like in that broken family dynamic, and then having another father introduced to the situation who picked up the broken pieces and helped put us back together.
And part of it being a weird connection with, some of your cousin was that being part of the overall story.
Right. And there's another song that goes into a little more detail in regards to my father, but my biological father struggled with drug and alcohol addiction most of his life, and he got sober for a little while. And then after a brief time of sobriety, he went back to using again, and the first time he used, he overdosed. And my mother had moved my brother and I out of the house during that season to live with friends, just to live in a safe environment. And we were getting ready to move back in with my dad because he had come back from rehab and he was clean. And then the father of the family we were staying with went to check in on him one day and found him dead in our house. So drugs and alcohol have taken quite a few family members and friends, for that matter. So I speak a lot about that subject matter in a lot of what I write and just share in general, because it is a part of my story. And it destroys families. But the beautiful part of my story as well is that there's redemption from those things, and I believe that there's redemption for everyone struggling with whatever you might be struggling with in life. And so I speak to that as well, and we've seen God's providence in our life, even just bringing my stepfather into the situation, who is by all means my father now, and I claim him and will forever as our dad, and he even earlier in life struggled with addiction, and thankfully, actually a crazy part of this whole story is that the day that my brother was born was the day that my future stepfather got sober. Literally the exact same day, and we didn't know him. There was no connection. It was just that day was the day that began his sobriety, and that was the day my brother came into the world. So every time they celebrate a birthday, we celebrate a sobriety date, and they're both coming up close to 30 years now. So
I was just addicted to rock and roll.
Yeah, and machine guns. So I don't know, it's been a crazy journey so far, and we're still on it, and I'll continue to write songs about it, and the intimate details of what's gone on in my family, what is going on in my family right now, and we're going through some more tough stuff, and I am looking back on where we've come from and just believing that we're going to get through this and be able to look back on this season as well. And I'll write another song about it that'll talk about kind of the difficulties and the victories in it all.
And we just talked earlier while we were in the middle of filming this, just like how important music sometimes ends up being in that process of like dealing with it and like kind of like helping you work through it.
Yeah, and that's, I was just talking to a friend about this recently. I do want to record and release these songs, and I'd like to share them with people, and I have shared them with a few, and but there is something to be said about, for me, having written these songs years ago. I mean, Cousin Peter's 9 years old, and so maybe it'll be 10 years old by the time I finally release it, but over that 10-year time span, it's been very therapeutic for me, and I wrote it for myself, So, and I have a lot of songs in that regard that I've written that I've only ever really played for myself, and there's therapy in that. But like you and I were talking about, Brandon, there's the beauty of music is that when you share it with someone, it takes your vulnerable moment or situation or circumstance and puts it out there to be recognized by others and then shared by others, and music creates that environment where people can be like, oh yeah, I've experienced that too, you know, and then you can connect it. And yeah, so that's kind of one of the most beautiful things about music. But anyway,
any specific lyrics in your song that might come up that you think that people just is not that well, or they all feel broad, just
yeah, man, I don't know. I'd have to look through them, I guess. Again, this is a lot of what I've written over the years has been kind of cryptic and poetic, so I would have to break it down. These songs are literally just telling a story of what happened. So to me, they seem straightforward, but I guess you'd have to know some of the intimate details.
I guess the most important thing right now is the river.
I was about to say, yeah, one fun thing, you know, the lyrics that talk about, we battled the wind and the rain, and we bathed in the river. This is the river, and we're actually in my hometown right now that me and Brent did a lot of our growing up in. And man, we've spent a lot of time on this river. We have literally bathed in it. We've swam in it. We've had baptisms in it. And this boat that we're sitting in right now that has been beached on the shoreline for an eternity. We don't really know how long it's been here, but Richie can attest to some wonderful moments that have been shared in this space, so it's cool that we're able to come back here and share some more moments in it. Yeah.
I guess the question is, well, I was going to say, where can people find you, but there is no where to find you.
This is where you can find me. Come to the river!
I will, if you're following theLionhearted, when he finally does what he needs to do, it'll be pomp and circumstance for sure. If you live in the Lehigh Valley and you want carpentry done, this is also your boy.
It's true. Know how to use a hammer and a saw.
Awesome. Well,